I'm actually going to shift us into Q&A because we have some of our guests today have actually sent us some questions and are actually talking really specifically to the point you're making, Signe. So one of our questions, who is from Anonymous, is really curious about what radical rest looks like structurally in your organizations. Are staff working more than 40 hours a week? What's PTO and other benefits? Have you attempted to shift systems when folks have shared that they are burning out at work? And I'm happy to share a little bit about what we've been doing at Headwaters, especially over the last couple of years. One is we have really spent a lot of time working on our employee policies, right? This is this is something that's institutional. We codify these things, right? We create cultures. And so we spent a lot of time last year really thinking through what does it look like to provide people time for rest and creativity and the other things they need to be doing in their lives. And so that's look like, one, we provide a winter and a summer break. So we give people like full weeks off. You're fully paid for it. You don't have to request that time. It doesn't go against your vacation balance, right? We've instituted a summer Fridays. So we work a 32-hour work week in the summer and everybody gets every Friday off, right? So those are some really simple things that we've done. And what we've recognized is, you know, again, we are a workplace. We have things we want to do. We have goals, and our goals are about supporting and resourcing movements. And what we've recognized is that giving people more time for themselves has not at all detracted from the work that they're able to do. In fact, what we're seeing is that people are really like having more success, that the quality of their work, they're both getting high quality work, but are really proud of it and don't feel as burned out. And then the second thing that we've done is we've engaged Marie Michael. We just got done with our very first year of somatic coaching with Marie, and she's really helped us. I mean, Marie, you've like been amazing in helping us to build this idea of what does it mean to resource our individual and collective bodies. And that's become a way that we're talking about this work all the time. So I think there's ways that organizations can be doing this in employee manuals, but it's also, again, like you said, it's in our budget. We put Marie Michael in our budget for the second year this year, and we're testing out new ways of supporting people as well through that work. And I think it's imperative, as you've said, that organizations are carving a piece of their budget out, not as a luxury or a pie in the sky ideal, but as a necessary component of the work that they're doing. Do y'all want to add anything?
Yeah, I can add. Sorry, Maria.
Oh, good.
I mean, so we're only 5 years old, right? So I want to just lay that out there because it's hard when you're a growing nonprofit, right? The budget is just so small, and we are at a point where we can do some of these really cool things that Maria just mentioned. One thing I'll say is that, you know, before the pandemic, Rise worked Tuesdays and Thursdays in the office. You got to work the rest of your hours wherever you wanted, from home, from a coffee shop, whatever felt like good to you, that made you feel productive. So we're going to continue that model of, you know, you work when you're for it, but when we want to do things with the team, that's what Tuesdays and Thursdays are for. So we understand how important it is to also be with each other in the office, but we also, you know, last year during the uprising, we got doxxed, right? Somebody put our information out on the internet, and one of our employees, her family and herself, she was threatened. And so we had an entire digital training that we went through, an audit, and we got funding, luckily, to have this audit done. But then what we did was we were asked to carve out money for our self-care. So this funder had actually told us, take a pot of this money and put it towards self-care for your staff because of everything that you have just gone through in these past few weeks. And so we were able to provide a small stipend for everybody, but they could do whatever they want, and they got to define self-care in their own way, right? I didn't even want to know what they did with the money. We just had our operations manager deal with reimbursements and things like that, but you could do whatever you want. And so it finally got us to a point where now we can offer healthcare. And I think with radical rest, you know, you don't want to worry about your health during this time. And
Right.
I didn't realize like people didn't need to just like go for their annual physicals. They also needed like mental health resources and therapy and be able to pay for those things, right? And now as we go into like 2022, these are all the things that we're gonna go deeper in, right? We're gonna find out more about what is it that the team needs so that they can rest. Is it shutting down the entire office for weeks at a time, right? When I heard you talk about sabbatical, wouldn't it be great if everybody took a sabbatical all at one time and things wouldn't fall apart in our community? And I want to make sure I model the behavior, right? I don't want to be working 40, 50 hours a week and then expect everybody else to rest and then not resting myself. And so these are just small things that we have implemented, and we hope to do a lot more in 2022.
Yeah. I'm going to move on, if you don't mind, to there's kind of 3 questions that we've received that are really similar. So I think it's pretty cool that people are this much in sync with us today. But the question is really around white supremacy and white supremacy culture, right? And the ways in which, even if whiteness as a social construct, as this like powerful influence in our society isn't in our room because we are organizations that are BIPOC led, because of the ways that we're trying to lead, still has an influence, right? And the ways that we're supporting our teams. So how do we work with our team members to think about, these things around like perfectionism, paternalism, I know in our team, Marie, we've talked about false sense of urgency. We've also talked about, I've joked around with my team to say, you guys, C's get degrees. Like, I'm clear that my team are like high achievers. Everybody were A students, but like, what does that do? And actually, like, how can we make sure that we're saying to ourselves at times, like, no, this is good. Like, and actually let good be good. And so, right, how does this sort of impact us, and how are we supporting our teams to sort of break through that paradigm? And that's the water we're swimming in every day, people. So how do we help our teams do that? And I think part of it's what you're saying, Hussain, as far as modeling, but what else are you seeing?
Well, I will just say that I don't have a whole lot to say. I mean, what Hussain and Maria have said, and what I've watched Marie model, is really trying to shift that paradigm. And I thank you so much for saying an emerging organization is not necessarily in a place to really have great clarity about that. The fields at Rootsprings for sure is emerging. And I think we are trying to envision and build the structures that make a worker cooperative where we get to name our labor, what it looks like, and how to pay for it, takes a lot of initial energy. It is like, what is the combustion of the initial moment so that the system can grow and happen? So I don't know that we don't have a great track record. Signe Harriday don't have a great track record for showing how this shows up in our emerging organization. But what I can say is that it's not that it's not a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And I do think for our organization and for our formation, the fields at Rootsprings, we do have the question, how do we support other people's rest when we're not resting ourselves? And I think that I'm here to say we don't know yet. We just don't know. And I hope that humility and that honesty provides maybe some comfort for people to recognize that we're not going to flip a switch and get it right. And that speaks to the perfectionism. I love what Bell Hooks has to say, that we don't need any men in the room to perpetrate and perpetuate patriarchy. We can do it on our own. And I think white supremacy and white supremacist culture is so true. It's like in the molecules of the air we breathe. But I do think that the more we engage with rest, the more we can extract ourselves away from those norms and ways of being.
The one thing that I would add to the conversation is just this idea of being able to create space for feedback. I think when you're in organizations that have been working on that, perfectionism is the way to go, and that we need to do everything fast and well, to be able to actually ask when good enough is good enough, right? And to be able to be in a process with the folks that you're working on and determining what that looks like, and then being able to disagree with each other around that. I think it's really important to actually create the space for change, and to also know that it's like what I have seen at Headwaters over the course of the years, it's a process of iteration and practice. And they, like being able to come back every month in a conversation with me to say, so what did you do? Like, is good enough good enough? And what are the conversations that you're having about that? And how did you use your Friday, right? How are you using the resources that the organization is giving you to actually take care of yourself? Are you? All right, so here's a little bit of time right now to actually plan for your next week. And there are also some just embodied practices that I think are really helpful in terms of setting boundaries. I know working with another organization, one of the things that I asked them to do, in addition to the embodied practice of, that I learned about just actually being able to say no and practice saying no, is I had them whip out their calendars. Sydney, you might remember this.
I do. And
actually create space because they kept talking about abolition and about what it means to be free. And I said, I need you to create some free space on your calendar right now. I'll give you 5 minutes. And to actually look at their calendar and see, is there any free space on the calendar?
Amen.
No. Okay, so what is that already like? That's just like an awareness in and of itself. And then the next level is, how do I create some free space? Where is a place where I can actually say no and stand solidly in my no, and be able to take some time for myself.
Yeah. Well, this is a lot. I know I'm getting a ton out of this, and I hope for our guests that are listening in and watching this conversation that you're thinking about, like, how can you find some free space? How are you integrating rest into your work, into your daily practices, and really, again, to look at it as a necessary component of our lives, not a luxury that only gets afforded certain people.